My global issue is that the quality of literature influences perspective. This global issue is relevant because literature influences how individuals perceive and understand the world. The purpose of this oral is to examine the effect of this with respect to poor fiction and great fiction. I will be exploring the influence of literature in two works: the novel Northanger, Abbey, first published in 1817, written by Jane Austen, and this is a coming-of-age novel following Catherine Morland during the 18th century. My second work will be Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress, first published in 2000, written initially in Chinese, authored by Dai Siji, and translated by Ina Rilke. And this novel follows two young boys during the 20th century who are subject to the communist re-education regime in Mao's China. I will begin by examining Northanger Abbey, and I will start by looking at my extract, which depicts Catherine's arrival at Northanger Abbey and illustrates how her perspective has been shaped by the exaggerated dramatic qualities of Gothic literature. This is evident first through Austen's use of irony, specifically anticlimactic descriptions such as in lines 12 to 14, where a contrast is established between Catherine's Gothic-inspired imagination and the actual reality that she encounters. We see that she imagines, in line 13, that the breeze will waft the sighs of the murder to her, which contrasts with what actually occurs, which is that the breeze, again line 13, had wafted nothing worse than a thick, mizzling rain. This contrast is furthered through Austen's use of imagery. Austen uses vivid visual descriptions of the Abbey's interior, such as in line 20, slabs of plain though handsome marble, and again in line 25, referring to the windows. Every pane was so large, so clear, so light. And these vivid visual descriptions highlight the Abbey's simplicity, which is then juxtaposed with Catherine's imagined scene of 926, painted glass, dirt, and cobwebs. We see how these contrasts show how Catherine's imagination, which has been shaped by the Gothic novels that she reads, has led her to expect this hyperbolized version of reality. The syntax of the extract also symbolizes the effects of poor fiction on Catherine's perspective, this time through her thought process, which lacks depth, just like the Gothic fiction that she reads. We see this particularly in lines 6 to 12, which is a long stream of conscious sentence, where Catherine's thoughts jump from line 6, a sudden scud of rain, to line 7, the welfare of her new straw bonnet, to line 8, actually under the Abbey walls, to line 9, shelter of the old porch. So we see how these fleeting surface level reactions display Catherine's inability to reflect deeply on things, supporting the notion, therefore, that not only does poor fiction obscure her perspective, but it also limits her perspective. When we zoom out to take a look at the whole novel, this idea is again confirmed. Catherine is an avid reader of Gothic novels, and these Gothic plots rely on exaggerated tropes and melodrama that is focused on sensationalism rather than actual depth. Therefore, they mislead Catherine into having a distorted view of reality and a distorted perspective. And this is seen most prominently through Austen's use of free and direct discourse, which blends Catherine's subjective thoughts with the narrator's voice, allowing us as readers to experience the world through Catherine's perspective, but while still maintaining this distance that makes it clear to us how absurd Catherine's Gothic-influenced interpretations are, especially when paired with Austen's satirical tone, which heightens the ridiculousness and the misleading impact of these Gothic novels. Furthermore, Austen's use of parody mimics and exaggerates the conventions of Gothic literature, as well as critiques their influence. We see this in Catherine's overblown fears throughout the entire novel and her wild conjectures, such as suspecting sinister plots and hidden murders at the Abbey. And Catherine's behavior in this sense parodies the exaggerated drama and the suspense that is typical of these Gothic novels and of these Gothic-style heroines. Austen's use of parody not only underscore the flaws in Catherine's perspective, but also satirizes the Gothic genre itself, again generating this idea that consuming this shallow, sensational fiction once again can lead to an obscured perspective. However, on the other hand, In the novel Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress, Cixi generates the idea that fiction of great quality can influence perspective positively. It can enhance perspective. So I will now be moving on to take a look at my second extract, where we see the reaction of the protagonists after reading their first Western novel titled Ursule Mirouet, written by Balzac. And I would first like to draw your attention to the expressive and enthusiastic language that is used to emphasize the greatness of this book written by Balzac. First, in line 1, we have the word magic, and in line 11, profound. In line 30, credible and riveting, and this diction highlights the transformative impact of Balzac's novel. Building on this idea of transformation, we have rhetorical questions in lines 8 to 11, such as, did Four Eyes stop to think about which book he would lend us, or was it a random choice? And these rhetorical questions further convey how reading these books has influenced the narrator to seek a broader understanding of his own life through this questioning. We also see a shifting viewpoint. This is in line 18, where the narrator has shifted his viewpoint from first person to third person and now refers to himself, saying, picture, if you will, a boy of 19 still slumbering in the limbo of adolescence. And this phrase showcases this evolving viewpoint, the shift between first and third person, generating the idea that the unnamed narrator now has an enhanced perspective in adopting this third person point of view rather than first person. Even the keyword slumbering in line 18 symbolizes how literature can act as this awakening force. This is echoed in line 23 when the narrator refers to my complete ignorance of that distant land called France, implying then that it was only until he had read this great enhancing fiction that he was able to finally acknowledge this distant land that he had previously been ignorant of. And in zooming out to take a look at the whole novel, Cixi continues to affirm that the quality of fiction plays a crucial role in influencing perspective. This is amplified by Cixi's use of religious diction throughout the entire novel. He uses religious diction to refer to the novels, the great Western fictional novels, as if they are sacred relics, positioning them as divine and as transcendent and capable of enlightening their readers. This portrayal is deepened through Cixi's use of narrative shift. As the unnamed narrator reads more and more of this great fiction, he gradually grows into his role as a storyteller, which is showcased by a narrative shift, by this shifting viewpoint between first and third person. And we saw this in my extract, and it reflects how the narrator, is changing from a passive recipient of stories to an active creator of stories. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to the characterization of the Little Seamstress throughout the entire Balzac and Little Chinese Seamstress novel, which further illustrates how literature can expand perspective. The Little Seamstress is initially confined by her identity as a simple mountain girl. However, she undergoes a profound transformation through her engagement with this Western literature. She asks for new age shoes, she makes herself new clothes, she styles her hair differently, and these are all characteristics that she has pulled from these great fictional stories that she has read. And this ultimately empowers her to seek an identity beyond that of a simple mountain girl. By the novel's end, she, in fact, leaves for the city, which is an act that symbolizes her motivation to seek these broader experiences as a result of her now enhanced perspective from this exposure to this great fiction. In conclusion, Austen's Northanger Abbey and Cixi's Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress both affirm my global issue, which is that the quality of literature influences perspective. In Austen's novel, Catherine's obsession with Gothic literature skews and obscures her perspective, highlighting how poor literature can reinforce unrealistic expectations. In Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress, the unnamed narrator's exposure to Balzac's profound and transformative work, amongst other great fictional stories, broadens his understanding of life, showing how this great literature can foster critical thinking and an enhanced perspective. These works contrast each other, but both ultimately illustrate literature's power to influence how we perceive ourselves as well as the world that is around us. Thank you for listening.